Hi guys, good morning. I do hope you're doing really great. So we're going to be talking about the talk of the town right now, which is Melissa, currently a struggling tropical storm that is expected to intensify into a major hurricane over the coming days. And even though it is now seeming as though the center of the system is going to pass just south of Jamaica, the concern really looks as though it should be when it makes a curve near the island, as there is a possibility that the system could make landfall or pass just west, but will be close enough to unleash major hurricane impacts as we head into next week. So we're talking days of impacts because rain is already starting to move into the eastern section of the island as expected. So let's go into the details. Alrighty guys, so returning to this satellite imagery here of the Caribbean, we can see that Melissa is a disheveled mess this morning. It's really trying to get itself back together, and especially since it's barely moving. I mean, the storm is literally moving at 2 miles per hour. That's almost stationary. So hasn't moved much between yesterday and today. And now we can see that rainfall, all that convection spread to parts of Hispaniola, which have been feeling impacts from the system, even go into the eastern portions of Jamaica as well. So if you're in eastern Jamaica, you may be experiencing some downpours this morning. And this is a look at the latest cone forecast from the National Hurricane Center. So we can see that Melissa is holding on to that intensity, 50 mile per hour maximum sustained winds, currently headed to the west at 2 miles per hour. So it should begin a northwestward motion over the coming days. And as we're going to be headed into the end of this week on Saturday morning, it's likely to intensify into a Category 1 hurricane. After that point, while a high pressure system is going to be building north of the area, that will allow it to temporarily start moving on a more westward track. So it will be passing just south of Jamaica, mind you. This is to track the center, and there could always be additional adjustments to this track. This track could be a bit closer, potentially a little bit further, but this seems to be the likely path of the system. But then there's going to be a weakening in that area of high pressure early next week, which will open the door for Melissa to then make a curve up and out to the northeast. And this graphic only goes out 5 days, but we're starting to see the hints of that curve, and we see an M, and that is representative of major hurricane status. Up until the end of this forecast, the National Hurricane Center is expecting Melissa to be a Category 4 hurricane, potentially with winds of 130 miles per hour. That's just the sustained winds. So wind gusts will be even stronger, likely around 150 miles per hour, with subsequent strengthening pretty likely. Now, how close to Jamaica could this curve early next week? We're going to look at that momentarily. So for now, Melissa is going to continue that extremely slow motion, and then it's going to move a bit west and then up to the northwest before eventually going north and making a turn out to the northeast. Okay, this is a look at our model track guidance. We can see the various models here expecting that curve. They're all showing the same scenario, some earlier, some later. We have a couple that want to show that the system may make a sooner curve and do a little S motion much closer to Jamaica rather than just moving fully south of the island and then making a curve. And we have others showing a much later curve of the system. Again, this is to track Melissa's center. And also, people seem to be getting rather relaxed and breathing a sigh of relief that, hey, this is not going to affect us. Not true, because, as I mentioned, the cone of uncertainty is to track where the center of the system goes. So it's going to bring that rain surge over the coming days. And even as it passes south of the island, it could result in some tropical storm force wind gusts, and the storm surge as well will be possible along the southern coast of Jamaica. So that's the winds off Melissa pushing some of that seawater onshore. So at that point, upper level winds are expected to start getting more favorable. That's the primary factor that is actually causing the system to struggle so much right now. And even looking at the graphic here for it, we can clearly see that these red lines indicate unfavorable upper level winds, which are forecast to become more favorable for the system. So when we start to see the yellowing, especially those green shadings within the vicinity of Melissa, that is where those winds are not so strong, thus allowing the system to develop without intruding or interfering. And let's also look at two of our main models right here. So honestly, I'm going to be disregarding the GFS model. Its scenario seems to be highly unlikely. Just has a system moving up and crossing over the vicinity of Hispaniola and out. That is what it's been very locked in with. But based on the atmospheric setup, we're more to see a scenario is what the Euro model is expecting. Let's go on to those. So here we go with the Euro. It has the system moving very slowly near Jamaica, kind of crawling. And we see those black circular lines getting deeper, a key sign of intensification. And as we're going to be headed into next week, going into Tuesday, is when Euro is actually expecting landfall. And landfall is when the center of the system moves onshore. So that would be a catastrophic scenario for Jamaica, because Euro is showing something that will likely be a category 4 hurricane. Not at all something that we want to deal with. And then as for the Icon model, Icon is showing something where the system kind of loiters and moves a little bit closer to Haiti, then close to Jamaica, doesn't make landfall, but then it weakens a bit and head up to the north, probably going over eastern Cuba. We can see here that track, that curve is still very much uncertain at this point, but it's pretty likely that the system will be making a much closer approach to Jamaica. So even if it takes a bit longer to make that curve and the center or the worst of impact stay offshore, we could still be within that zone of even hurricane impacts, because if it's a Cat 4, it's likely that those Cat 4 winds will stay offshore if the center doesn't move in, because the strongest winds are around the center in a place called the eye wall. So if the eye wall should brush the island, then some areas in far western Jamaica could experience those major hurricane impacts. But if it's a bit more offshore, then the impacts would not be so terrible. Maybe what we get would be reminiscent of a category 1 or 2 hurricanes. So we'll have to wait and see. This is such a delicate situation, guys, and I'm here to keep you posted. That's why I'm doing these videos, to ensure that you have the latest information out there. So continue to spread the word. We are not out of the woods. Do not watch the fact that for the short term, the center of the system is likely to pass south of the island. And then for Haiti, Haiti is under that hurricane watch, so hurricane conditions will be possible. We already have the outer periphery of Melissa bringing in a lot of rain, so additional heavy rainfall is likely, and that may result in flooding and additional instances of landslides. So that will be the case for Haiti and even the Dominican Republic. So a wet weekend is ahead for parts of the Caribbean. So for Jamaica, those impacts, as I mentioned, that rain is starting to move into the eastern section of the island. So now through the middle of next week is when we could be dealing with impacts, mostly rain for the next couple of days, maybe going into Sunday. But then dependent on that curve as well, that could result in more exacerbated impacts going into late Monday, Tuesday, possibly Wednesday. So I'm going to keep watch. And for other parts of the Caribbean, there's no other significant feature around aside from Melissa. So expect scattered showers, maybe a couple thunderstorms throughout today, especially towards the afternoon. So that's it for now, guys. I do hope you found this update to be informative. But if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'll get to you when I can. And remember to always be weatherwise.